Konkara Training, Asbestos Awareness, Section 4. The Health Effects of Exposure. To recap on our previous session, we looked at the different types of asbestos. It is well known that exposure to asbestos fibers can have a negative effect on health. Today we will look at each of these health effects. Before we get started, take 5 minutes and jot down a few ideas on the health effects you think might be associated with asbestos exposure. Demographics. Let's look at some asbestos-related statistics. In the UK, there were more than 5,000 deaths a year to asbestos exposure. Most recent statistics show that in 2019 there were 2,369 deaths due to mesothelioma, and also 490 deaths in 2019 due to asbestosis. Widespread use of asbestos-containing products in the past, particularly in the post-World War II building industry, led to a large increase in asbestos-related disease in Great Britain over the last few decades. As shown in the graph, asbestos-related deaths are projected to decrease over the next couple of decades. This is due to the banning of asbestos use in the UK. In the graph we can see there are large differences in the magnitude of rates between the different age groups. This is consistent with those that were born more recently tending to have lower asbestos exposure than those born earlier and were of working age during the period when asbestos was widely used. Recent research shows that the countries that have been affected most by asbestos-related death are the USA, India, and Great Britain. Within Great Britain, the highest death rates are seen in the northwest and the northeast. Health effects. To properly understand the effects of exposure to asbestos, we have to have a basic understanding of the human lungs. The trachea, or the windpipe, allows inhaled air to enter the lungs. The air enters the lungs through the bronchi. The bronchi then divide into smaller and smaller branches, known as bronchioles, finally becoming microscopic. At the end of the bronchioles, there are microscopic air sacs called alveoli. Asbestosis is a chronic lung disease where scar-like tissue is formed. The scar tissue makes breathing more difficult. Those with fully developed asbestosis will likely suffer shortness of breath, coughing, chest pain, reduced lung function, and bluish skin coloration. Asbestosis can be detected on chest X-rays. The X-ray will show irregular opacities, which are spots in the X-ray film where the X-ray could not see through the tissue. Crackles may also be heard when listening through a stethoscope. The risk of getting lung cancer after asbestos exposure depends on a number of factors. Factors include the level and duration of exposure, the time since exposure occurred, the age at which exposure occurred, the tobacco smoking history of the exposed person, the type and size of the asbestos fibers. Research shows that smokers are between 50 and 100 times more likely to develop asbestos-related lung cancer compared to those who do not smoke. The time from exposure to the development of cancer is known as the latency period. The average latency period is 20 to 30 years. Lung cancer is generally associated with long-term exposure to asbestos. Lung cancer has also been reported in household contacts, family members of asbestos workers. This is presumably from exposure to asbestos carried home on work clothes. Lung cancer usually doesn't cause symptoms in the early stages. When symptoms occur, the cancer is often advanced. Symptoms of lung cancer include chronic cough, weight loss, shortness of breath, fever, and chest pain. Mesothelioma is a malignant tumor that is caused by inhaling asbestos fibers and forms in the lining of the lungs, abdomen, or heart. Mesotheliomas are relatively rare in the general population, but are often observed in asbestos workers. Malignant mesothelioma is an aggressive, usually fatal cancer. The latency period is usually 30 to 40 years. Symptoms of mesothelioma include dry cough, weight loss, and a fever. Research is currently being done on other potential health effects of asbestos. Several studies have been conducted regarding asbestos exposure and its impact on the immune system. It has not yet been determined whether asbestosis has resulted in changes in immune function. To recap on our session, we've looked at the health effects of exposure to asbestos. In our next session, we'll look at the emergency procedures when dealing with asbestos. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.
Created using Powtoon.